Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. City of Evanston bills, fiscal year 2012 through September 11th, 2012, and credit card activity ending July 31st, 2012. The bills total $5,446,750.40, and the credit card activity totals $139,368.03.
Move approval.
Second.
Any questions?
And the bills. Questions?
We do have the bills list. Are there any questions?
Questions that we passed out. I don't know.
Any more? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. A3.1, approval of a sole source purchase of Talmadge streetlight poles from Gray Bar Electric, and recommendation of staff for the purchase of 10 Union Metal Talmadge streetlight poles in the amount of $27,352.90, funding to be provided by the General Fund Traffic Signals and Street Light Maintenance Account. Is there a motion?
Second.
Alderman Rainey.
Madam Chair, I understand that this is a sole source and that only Union Metal fabricates our poles. But what I want to know is Gray Bar the only distributor or seller, I think distributor of the poles? I didn't.
Mr. DeHal?
Roger Dahl, senior traffic engineer. Yes, Gray Bar is the distributor for this, the only distributor for this.
The only one?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? A3.2, approval of contract for large diameter sewer rehabilitation Phase 1 with, how do you say this? The name, In Situ Form? In Situ Form Technologies USA, in the amount of $2,989,228 for the large diameter sewer rehabilitation Phase 1, contingent upon receiving the appropriate loan funding from the Illinois EPA.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor? It's approved. Thank you. 3.3, approval of 2012 structure lining contract for 50 brick sewer manholes with National Power Routing Corporation in the amount of $79,324, funding provided by the Sewer Fund, Capital Improvement Fund. This is for action. Is there a motion?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. 3.4, approval of a contract with G.A. Johnson & Son for the Evanston Water Utility Security Door Replacement. Staff is recommending execution of a contract for the door replacement in the amount of $94,880, funding to be provided by the Water Fund Capital Improvement Plan account with a budget of $50,000 and additional funding in the Water Fund CIP account. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Alderman Rainey.
Just pointing out that it's 3 doors, so that people don't think it's just one.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 3.5, approval of contract extension with Connolly's Academy, an agreement for martial arts instruction at the Levy Center, in the amount for a total of $30,000.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. 3.6, approval of the single source purchase from Total Parking Systems of 4 CALE compact pay and display parking terminals, a pilot project on 4 blocks of Church Street. The total amount is $51,296 to be paid out of our parking fund account.
Move approval. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alderman Rainey? Pause.
You know, I like these because you don't have to worry about, feeding the meter, that kind of thing. But they're the worst idea if it's raining, have kids, and you have to walk. You can't leave your kid in the car, wrapped in the seat. You've got to walk to the box. Then you've got to walk back to the car, unlock the car, put it back in. it's, on one hand, it's a convenience, on the other hand, it's very inconvenient. So I hope that they're closer together than in some cases.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes, Madam Chair. Alderman Rainey, we will be taking all of those comments into account as Mr. Voss and I go through a review of all of our meters and these types of devices as we look at the credit card meters. So we appreciate the comments because these boxes do not go everywhere, are not always liked by everyone. They have their advantages and disadvantages.
What about the parking meters that you can use a credit card with?
That will be a part of our bid that is going to, we hope to have the bid out, I'm hoping within the next 2 weeks. So we hope to have a bid out, and the bid will include a request to replace all of our meters. We may not do them all within 1 year's time. We will certainly make every effort, but the goal is to go to electronic payment devices as quickly as possible.
I mean, in good weather, they're not so bad, but they are inconvenient if they're not really close together. And I think the parking meters with the swipe ability is much better.
And they have been working up to what we expected. So we've had good reviews on those from both a maintenance and ease of use. They haven't been. I know my experience from the early days of the little round key that you would stick in instead of a quarter, and then you'd see the number 2 pencil broken off in every one of them. This is a nice solution to that. It's a much better technology, and these are also solar.
It's a good thing. Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? None? Thank you. A3.7, approval of the contract award to A-Lamp Concrete Contractors for additional motor fuel tax street resurfacing in the amount of $289,126.50, funding to be provided by the Motor Fuel Tax Fund. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. 3.8, approval of Central Street Emergency Water Main Replacement Contract Award to Glenbrook Excavating and Contracting in the amount of $1,565,915.85. This emergency contract will expand the scope of the 2012 water main and street resurfacing contract to include the emergency water main replacement and street resurfacing work on Central Street from Cowper to Central Park Avenue, funding to be provided from the Water Fund and the 2 water funds, it appears, and the Capital Improvement Program street resurfacing account.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. A4, approval of change order number 1 to the Church Street Improvement Contract for the Central Street Streetscape, Lincolnwood Drive to Ewing Avenue, in the amount of $276,443. A change order to include streetscape work on Central Street from Lincolnwood to Ewing on the south side, funding to be provided from the Economic Development Fund and our Capital Improvement Program Fund, in the amount of never mind. Is there a motion?
Second.
Alderman Rainey.
Madam Chair, would you remind me if our streetscape projects are usually funded out of economic development?
I think that's a good question for our city staff. Is there anyone who can help us?
I didn't take the time
Yeah.
to look it up, but I thought it was a little, I didn't recall that happening.
Good evening, Chair, committee members. I'm Suzette Robinson, Director of Public Works. Alderman Rainey, this is one of the first projects that the streetscape is actually funded out of the Economic Development Fund. This is similar to I guess in lieu of a facade improvement, this is actually the streetscape improvement in that particular area.
And how much is the streetscape improvement part? Is it the?
Well, there's some street improvement that needs to be done. The sidewalk is actually being widened in the area.
I'm looking to see how much of this is streetscape as opposed to street repair.
Do you know what the breakdown? He said 90% of it is streetscape.
And it's out of economic development.
Yes.
Did economic development vote on this?
No.
I don't understand this at all.
It was approved as a part of the budget, and yeah, we actually brought it to council before we
To
bid
the
it out.
Economic Development Committee. Did it go to the committee?
I don't know, Steve.
Did not. I'm sorry, Alderman Rainey. I do not believe this went to the committee. However, as Director Robinson pointed out, this was a part of the July budget amendment when we amended all of the funds. I will pull that in between now and the council meeting.
Shame on me for missing it, but I would like to think more about this. I don't understand why it can't come out of capital improvement and not out of economic development. I just don't. Is it about a block? How long is it?
It's 2 blocks.
2 blocks?
2 blocks.
It's a large chunk of money.
I'm going to await city managers.
Madam Chair, committee members, certainly the council in the past has changed funding sources, so if you'd like to change the funding source, we'll go back through, because this was before the council, and we'll also double-check the Economic Development Committee agendas. It would have been from the spring. But if at this point the council would like to make the change, there would be capital improvement dollars that at this point in the year we know will not be spent, which we can reprogram.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to do this project, and I'd like the funds to be sought from the Capital Improvements Fund as opposed to economic development.
Is that a motion?
Can that be an amendment to the motion?
Yes.
First find out, before we do that, though, can we find out what happened? Because I'd like to know how did we get here? So if Marty said he can do it between, if we did that, I think we should look at that
I think
first.
we're all
Because if we
confident
missed it, we just
regarding
missed it.
the budget amendment that took place. I think what we need to do back is go back and look at the Economic
look at
Development
that.
Committee's agendas.
Can we just hold that until?
Alderman Burris?
Wait.
Okay. It did not go to Economic Development, but did come to the council.
Okay. And my comment was, Director Robinson, you equated to the facade improvement, and those all do come before economic development, so it seems to make sense that something like this would also come to economic development in the future.
Certainly.
So the plan for this procedurally tonight is to advance it to council, conditioned upon getting more information about the funding source?
That's not my motion. My motion is to amend this recommendation to do the project with capital improvement money. Could I have a second? Another second? All right. Now I'd like to speak to it. I don't doubt that I made a terrible mistake and voted for this when we had the budget presented to us earlier, the changes, the amendments to the capital improvement. But I'm changing my mind. And so I'm very interested in seeing what we did before, but that has nothing to do with my changing my mind and wanting to amend this. And if there's any support for amending it, I would really appreciate it, because I do not believe that we should be using economic development money for the streetscape. I think we should do the streetscape. I very much support it, but I think it should be done out of the capital improvement fund.
So to restate, the amended motion is to approve the change order number 1 for the Church Street Development Improvement Contract for Central Street streetscape for Lincolnwood Drive to Ewing Avenue, funding to be provided out of our Capital Improvement Program Fund, in a total amount of $276,443. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
No,
No.
because I want to know, I want to explain my no vote, because I heard Director Robinson say this is the first of projects that would be coming maybe for economic development funds for streetscape, similar to a facade. So I wanted to know a little, that's what piqued my interest. I'd like to know a little bit more about that, so
Okay.
that's why I'm voting no.
All right. So the vote is 4-1, Phil? Thank you. A5, approval of our January 1st, 2012 Police and Firefighter Pension Actuarial Report. And we have Mr., let me find it.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Lyons.
We have Mr. Art Tepfer, our actuary, who was hired by the Joint Committee of the City Treasurer and the two pension boards. We also have Mr. Tim Schoolmaster, who also would like to say, no, Tim is fine. But Mr. Tepfer will go through a brief discussion of the actuarial report. We also had one question, and I will forward the answer of that question. Alderman Wilson asked, what was the rate of return for the funds? And you may find that on both page 170 of your packet, and I believe it's 205. Mr. Tepfer.
Good evening.
Sorry, unless there's...
Alderman Burris?
It was actually something that I looked at too, is the rate of return over the last 3 years versus what we're sticking with that 7%. So
What
in
was,
your
what was the rate of return over the last 3 years?
No, it was 3.3 something, right?
6.8.
I'm in the ballpark here, but if you could address that, if we're sticking with the 7% as a smoothing, but...
Let me do that, yes.
Thank you, I appreciate
Yes.
that.
Welcome, Mr. Tepfer.
Thank you.
Glad to have you back.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be back. One of my favorite clients. Because you listen and understand, hopefully. With regard to the, now I'm going to have to show my age, excuse me, so I can see my own notes.
Well, in the meantime, my compliments for a very readable actuarial report.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
I can't say it was riveting, but it was very readable. Thank you.
Even my wife doesn't think it's riveting.
Yeah.
Some of the concerns, rather than some of the stronger points, because the strong points clearly are manifested in the fact of how the contributions have been determined and what the results are. Some of the things that I'm concerned about as an actuary when I look at pension funds. And if you recall, last year we talked about the fact that pension funds have a tendency to waive in some manner, and part of the point of the entire exercise is to determine where we are on that. We like funds to be going up and not coming down. But while actuaries can determine the contribution, they can't control or determine the funding, and they can't control it. That's beyond the scope of our being able to tell people it's time for you to retire or time for you to die. Likewise, to go out and get the best investment return you can in today's market is a very, very difficult thing to look at 7% as an appropriate interest rate assumption. Actuaries are governed by inertia. The standard question is, how many actuaries does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is the same number as last year. We don't like to change assumptions, and we look for trends before we change assumption. I have been working with the police pension fund for many, many years, and I've seen a lot of the actuarial reports. And a couple of years ago when we came in, we did a wholesale change of actuarial assumptions. How do we know they're right? Well, we don't know they're right, but we do think that they're appropriate. One of the things that actuaries do is to measure how the assumptions are holding up is what is called a gain and loss analysis, and there is one in each of these reports. I'm not going to go through the details of it, but effectively it says as follows. We start with the unfunded liability in the prior year, and we say if everything that the actuary assumed were to happen actually happened, this is what we would expect the unfunded liability to be. And then we measure it to what the unfunded liability actually is. And the difference is either a gain or a loss. The acceptable actuarial benchmark is if your gain or loss is within 3% of the amount of your unfunded liability, then you've done a pretty good job. That's a good result. Less than 3%, and we're happy. If it's over 3%, it means that there might be something wrong. It doesn't tell you what is wrong, but it might be something wrong, and then you can go in and investigate. Is it the investment return? Is it the turnover table, the retirement rates? What is causing that? I looked at the last report done by the prior actuary, and in both cases, they were over 3%, slightly over 3%. But one mistake or one deviation does not a trend make. So I looked back, and there had been years where it was under 3%, et cetera. All I have is 1 year, and our measures indicate that we were less than 1%. In fact, I think on one of them we were less, well, it was 0.05%.
Nice.
That's pretty darn close. The other one was 0.86%. So we were less than 1%. To me, that's encouraging. This year was a year in which everyone cooperated. Investment returns were clearly down, but there were gains from other sources. We are not trying to micromanage each assumption. Is 7% still a reasonable assumption? I don't think it's as reasonable as it was if we were sitting in 2007. I don't know, in all candor. But the only tool I have to measure is how are we doing in aggregate. That's the best I can give you. Does that help?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Good. What I am concerned about, the police pension fund is paying $8.7 million a year in pension payments. The fire pension fund is not written here.
6.1 million.
Thank you, 6.1 million. It
I'm sorry,
probably
you're
is
talking
written.
about the payroll or
I'm
the?
talking about the pension payroll.
Oh, sorry. So it's actually 7.2 million.
All right. A large number. I'm sorry, 6.8 million is what I had. 6.8 million is here. 8.7 police, 6.8 in fire. In order for investment return to cover that payment, without worried about other monies coming in and other monies going out, just for that, we would need a substantial amount of investment return, virtually 11 or 12%, which we're not going to get. It's just not going to happen. This isn't 1983 when we were earning 17% on our money market funds, and I don't believe that that's coming back. So if we're not going to get, if that's a given that money is going to go out, and additionally, in the police, 20% of the current active officers are eligible to retire within the next 2 years. And in the fire, 27% of the active firefighters are eligible to retire in the next 2 years. That, to me, is a signal that we're going to see an increase in the outgo of the pension fund without a corresponding increase in. Now, everyone is concerned about what percentage funded we are. I'm the only one probably in the room that doesn't really care, because I know that we're all going to be 100% funded in 2020. I mean, we're all going to be 100% funded in 2033. I mean, we're all going to be 90% funded in 2040.
Mr. Tepfer, we have a question. Alderman Rainey?
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, I think when we talk about the amount going out, the 8 million plus going out in benefits,
Yes.
that it's important, I thought some of the information that you provided was very interesting and very helpful, and done, like Alderman Grover said, in a way that you could actually read this and not, want to jump out the window. Anyway, that we have the numbers, the number of active versus the number of recipients, I think is very important. And I don't think most people know that. When you say that you're sending out $8 million plus a year in benefits, it's important to know that 174 people are out there receiving that money, correct?
That is correct. That's the number, yes.
And the most interesting thing, and this is probably across the board, but I don't happen to be into pension activities much, 174 are receiving benefits, 163 are paying into the fund who are active police
Because
pension.
that is what you have determined
Right.
is necessary
Exactly.
for public safety in the city.
Absolutely, but the numbers are so interesting. The number
Oh, I
is
see.
smaller paying in than the number receiving. And, that it's 8 million that we're going to levy for is interesting compared to the 1 million plus that the 167 are paying in. So,
You're concerned about the balance, is that?
well, no, I'm not concerned about the balance. I'm just interested in the reality. I think the numbers in and of themselves, just on the paper, the facts are very interesting. And it sort of makes it so much clearer
Well,
when you see it.
I thank you. I hope that is helpful to you. Again, that is not something that I can control, or
No.
I think that's more within your
Right.
purview.
But how
your-
many people in the city of Evanston who are complaining about the pension contribution that the taxpayers make in the levy know that we have 100 and however many pensioners receiving the money? I think it's an interesting number.
Mr. Lyons?
And Alderman Rainey, just as a follow-up, part of the pension reform was, or is designed to potentially shift that a little bit when we have officers now working until 55 rather than until age 50 for a minimum pension. So, again, that will take
That has been
15
addressed by the
years,
legislature.
but, so that number could shift slowly over time to flip-flop, even if nothing else changed in the demographic.
Would be good.
Nonetheless, that is it's a very valid point that the balance is there. And if we remember a little bit from last year, I tried to give a slight algebra lesson that said that the contribution C plus I, investment return, equal benefits. And that the problem is that we know that works as we finish this entire pension plan and we look back and say what a wonderful job the actuaries did and we did, the trustees did. We've just paid the last benefit out of the pension fund, and the contributions that went in plus the investment return was exactly what we needed for that to happen. There's no money left over. Unfortunately, we are in the middle of this schedule, if we will. We know the benefits that have already been paid, we know the contributions that have already come in, and we know the investment return that we have earned since day one. And we have a term for that. We call that the plan assets. What we don't know is what are the future benefits going to be, what is the future investment return going to be, and what are the future contributions going to be. But someone up there, perhaps, knows what the benefits are going to be. I can only make good estimates on what that will be, and then make an assumption about investment return, and the balancing item will be the future contributions. If we change the assumption, we'll get a different pattern. Once we've determined the amount of contributions, we have to figure out how to get them in, and this is the difference between what has been referred to as the recommended contribution versus the statutory minimum contribution. The recommended contribution is designed to be level, to serve three purposes as I see it. Number one, to build up the assets for the uniformed personnel. They don't retire on promises. Secondly, to come up with a methodology of proper budgeting for the city so that we don't have contributions that jump up and down. And third, to pay for the pensions being earned today and charge them to the current generation of taxpayers and not pass the cost off to our children and grandchildren. The recommended contribution using a methodology which is called entry age normal cost with a level dollar amortization of the unfunded liability serves those three purposes. That is what my recommended contribution is. The statutory minimum contribution using a methodology called the projected unit credit, or the PUC method as we refer to it, is an increasing funding method by design. It will increase. They also pay off the mortgage, the unfunded liability, as an increasing amount each year, a level percentage of payroll approach. It's taking a 7% mortgage and paying it off roughly at 1.5% a year. Yes?
Another question, Alderman
Another
Rainey?
question.
What is the formula for determining the contribution of an officer?
The benefit
Yeah.
for an officer.
No,
not
no, the contribution.
Police officers put in 9.91% of their pay. Firefighters put in 9.435% of their pay. Pay is a defined term in the statute, including certain items and not including other items.
Okay, so is that formula based on legislation or union negotiation, or?
It is based entirely on legislation, which is of course based upon union negotiation. Yes, it is a formula that is statutory. It started off many years, I believe, it's going to take me back, maybe 6% of pay initially. The design of the program, as I recall it, was 6% paid by the employees and 12% paid by the municipalities, a 2-to-1 ratio. But the statute only prescribes the employee contribution. As benefits have changed, the employees have shared in the increase. Maybe not at the same
It's no longer 2-to-1.
It's no longer, no, because it was designed to be 2-to-1. It is now, this is what the participants put in, and the city gets to put in the rest.
The rest,
Which
yeah.
means that if they have a very good year and their assets go way, way up, they still put in their 9% and 9% and change, and the municipality gets to put in very, very little.
And we're waiting for that
Municipality is
day.
the balancing item. Pardon me?
We're waiting for that day.
It has come and gone, I'm afraid. Yes, we did see that in the 80s, and we saw it in the 90s
Right.
a bit.
I have one question for Mr. Lyons. Mr. Lyons, could you tell us the $14 million that we'll be levying for police and fire pension, what percentage of that, what percentage is that the total levy, the general fund levy?
The total levy last year was just under 44 million, so it is approximately 1/3 of the total levy.
I think that's important to know when we're talking about our tax bill. So,
In any event, that really is all that I needed to explain to you. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. You're familiar with the differences in the two methodologies, and you see where we are. I think we've done a good job on the assumptions. It was indicated to me that someone wanted to should I be able to talk about that? There was a plan to get to a particular level of funding within a period of time?
Actually, earlier in the discussions regarding this, I desire to get up to 50% funded within 3 to 5 years, and how would we do that? And so Mr. Tepfer can talk a little bit about that.
I have no idea. Again, I never get excited about funding. Would you like to be 100% funded? I can make you 100% funded easily. I can assume that you're going to earn 20% interest on your money, and you will be well over 100% funded. The situation being, I don't really get excited about funded percentage. As I indicated earlier, it's a moving target. The legislature has the ability to change the target at any point in time. It is a target. The target currently is to be 90% funded by 2040. Will that be around? I don't know. I doubt very seriously if that will remain a target. It was, for many years, 100% funded by 2033 or 100% funded by 2020. But funding is only good if you use the same actuarial assumptions for everyone. And that means that you get into the same boat as East St. Louis, Cicero, Illinois, Killdeer, Lake Forest, all of them. And they have different funds. They have different investment philosophies. They have different officers and different groups of people. I left a fire protection district today where the average age of the group is 34 years old. They have 5 years of service. And they're using different assumptions than the city of Evanston because their group requires it. They don't have the dollars that Evanston has to invest. They're not as professionally managed. The job of the trustees is to go out and get the best return that they can with the amount of risk that they're willing to accept. End of story. They don't do anything else. My job is to help manage the liabilities by choosing appropriate assumptions. And your job, hopefully, is to continue on a funding pattern that will bring you to the three goals that I laid out in the beginning: to build up the assets for the participants, to have a budgeting pattern which you can control and feel comfortable with, and to pay for the pensions that are being earned today and not pass the costs off to the future. I believe that the recommended contribution will satisfy that goal.
Any other questions? I think we're simply approving recommendation to accept the report. Am I right, Mr. Lyons?
It is,
Review and approve.
right, to review and approve, and the idea being that you wouldn't want to approve anything lower than the state minimum. So when we're not doing that, we're reviewing and approving a recommended amount.
Alderman Rainey?
I move that are we just going to do the police first, or are we going to do both? I mean,
They're both part of A5, so.
okay. I move that we accept the report and approve the actuary's recommended contribution in both cases. Second. As opposed to the state or the...
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None? Thank you, Mr. Tepfer, very much.
Thank you very much.
Agenda item A6, approval of a contract agreement with International Association of Firefighters, Local 742. Staff is asking us to ratify a tentative collective bargaining agreement with our firefighters union, effective this January 1st of 2012 through next December 31st, a 2-year contract. Approval? For a second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I think that the committee really appreciates the negotiations and the settlement
Noted.
at Dimension.
Yes, indeed. Moving then on to A7, approval of a contract agreement with the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees Union, otherwise known as AFSCME, for the same time period, January 1st of this year through December 31st of next year, seeking City Council approval to ratify a tentative agreement with the union. Is there a motion?
Move approval. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Thank you. A8, Resolution 64R12, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Wilmette to grant an easement on Isabella Street for relief sewer installation and resurfacing of Isabella Street from Highland Avenue to Ewing Avenue, funding to be provided by the Capital Improvement Program funds in an amount not to exceed $200,000, and a one-time general fund transfer of $1 million previously approved by our City Council for additional street resurfacing.
Second.
Alderman Rainey?
I'd just like to comment that this is a nice local agreement with another community that really benefits both communities. We all get something out of it.
On a street that desperately needs resurfacing. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. A9, Resolution 64-5R12, authorizing the city manager to execute a lease agreement with Erie Family Health Center for office space in the Civic Center. Ground-level office space. Is there a motion?
Second.
Alderman Rainey.
Madam Chairman, I didn't read this one as carefully as I should. Is the clinic going to be elsewhere? Is this just office space? This is just
Right,
for,
I believe
just to
this
get
is-
up and going?
Yeah, they will
Okay,
find
all right.
the space out.
Build up the client base before they move to new space.
Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there an aye? All in
Aye.
favor? Any opposed? Thank you.
And I read where the rent is going to be put in the general fund.
Of $1 a year.
I know.
That'll change the bottom line.
Absolutely.
Item A10 has been moved off of our agenda for tonight. Moving on to A11, Ordinance 87-012, setting compensation for members of the Evanston City Council following recommendation of the Compensation Committee for a 2% raise for the next 4 years, beginning in May 2013 through May 2016. Is there a motion? Alderman Rainey?
I'll move it, but then I'd like to speak to it.
It's been moved and seconded for discussion.
I thought it was the chintziest increase that anybody could be given. If you're getting a 2% increase on $80,000 a year or $100,000 a year, that's a little different. But when you're getting a 2% increase on $12,000 a year, works out to be $4 a week. And having read 650 pages, 684 pages of a packet this week since Thursday, 36 pages of bills, and 17 very small print pages of credit card bills. When I read that a committee attempts to compare us to Skokie or Lincolnwood, it really gets me in a very bad state. This council works as hard as any council I've ever seen. I think great sacrifices are made by many members of the council who have other jobs that I do not have, which allows me maybe to work a little harder. So I'm going to ask if we could have a discussion about support, not for more pay. I'll accept the committee's recommendation, but I don't think that the committee understood, nor did they call before it, as far as I know. I don't know if any member of the council was asked to answer questions or anything. I don't think so. There are bills that we all have that are very difficult to cover based on the salary, and I'm just wondering if reimbursement for cell phone use, some of those kinds of things, is considered just expenses, like some of our members travel around the country at various meetings, which you should. I mean, I don't happen to do that. And I'd just like to know if we were to decide later to subsidize cell phones. When I was doing this, I looked at my cell phone, and, except for a couple of calls to my granddaughter, everything is city-related. I mean, so I'm wondering, is that the same as compensation? You know what I'm asking? I mean, are reimbursements the same as compensation? Because unless somebody drives downtown to a court case, I don't think any member of the council turns in receipts for...
Mr. Farrar.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, Grant Farrar, Corporation Counsel. With respect to your answer to your inquiry, Alderman Rainey, reimbursement is not considered compensation under the Illinois Municipal Code. Office-related expenses, while not specifically delineated out in either the Illinois Municipal Code or the Evanston City Code, are typically treated as a matter of custom and practice statewide, to my knowledge, as a separate line item that may be approved and voted upon by a legislative body. However, the code sections that we're talking about only talk about compensation, i.e. salary and or health benefits. They do not speak to expenses, which would be a separate discussion.
Okay, but a separate discussion, but governed under an entirely different set of conditions, right?
Correct. This only specifically speaks to a term of art, compensation under the Illinois Municipal Code and the City Code.
All right. I also noted, and perhaps may I continue, Madam Chair?
Please.
I also noted a little different wording in medical benefits. You say under compensation A that is crossed out, it says right now we're getting $12,000 a year plus medical benefits. Under the proposed amendment, you list the 4 years of salary. We go from $12,240 to $12,990, and then it says an alderman may elect to receive medical benefits. Is that is there any meaning in the different wording, or what?
Yes, Alderman Rainey, the drafting of that particular section, what I tried to do is reflect that some members of the council elect to take benefits and some do not. I was simply trying to conform this part of the code for the next 4 years to reflect the current realities. Of course, that's subject to this council's desires to word it differently. I was simply trying to use that for ease of reference.
But it has no subtle meaning, different meaning than right now. I mean, medical benefits are not forced on us. You either take them or you don't. For many, many years, I did not take them, so.
That is my understanding, Alderman Rainey, and what this particular section, the way it's worded, is it's left up to each council member's individual discretion and how they want to approach that particular issue.
Alderman Holmes?
I just wanted to comment on the committee's report, Alderman Rainey. If you remember, they said that they would really like to have more time, so maybe they just didn't have enough time to really endeavor into all of the particulars of what it entails. I know, and I'm just saying, so maybe one of the things that has to happen the next time is that the committee needs to be appointed much earlier, and that was one of their recommendations. I remember that from reading the report. So, and that would give them then time to really look at what it entails. And I always like to tell the story about listening to Steve Bernstein before I became an alderman, because I used to think, how could he say that? How could he be spending 60 to 80 hours a week working? I just couldn't believe it until I became an alderman. And I know it's possible to put in many, many more hours than what you would ever think, especially for something that's supposed to be part-time. This is not a part-time job in any respect of the way.
You can give it all the time.
And you can give it everything that you're willing to give it, believe me, and it's still not enough.
Sometimes I work the numbers, and on a good week, it's 30, 35 hours. So figure out then what the hourly rate is. I think it's pretty well under minimum wage.
We should file a complaint to the, fair labor or something.
And sometimes it occurs to me, too, that that the job is more like a Chicago alderman, but the expectation is more like a Chicago alderman, it being available and on the job full-time. It's kind of a funny hybrid between what village boards do and what a Chicago alderman would do. It's given the expectations of how much time you spend with this work. And so let me use this as an opportunity to thank all of you for all the time you put into this job.
Thank you. I would compare our effort to any Chicago alderman, especially the ones I know. Well, I think we ought to get $50,000
Alderman Burris?
a year.
You bring up a good point, Alderman Grover. What is the compensation for a Chicago alderman? And I'm serious. I mean, if we do a comparison of the compensation as well as, people also should know, we don't have staff. We don't have a budget. A lot of us pay many expenses out of our own pocket. I pay a lot of expenses out of my own pocket. So it would be nice actually to do a comparison when the compensation committee did the comparison for Skokie and Lincolnwood, but what is it for a Chicago alderman and their staff and the budget that they get would be good to put out there.
Yeah, I joke that my office is my laptop and my staff is my phone. But at the same time, I'm not sure I'm entirely comfortable even accepting a 2% raise because,
You don't have to accept it.
Yeah.
But I certainly am.
Okay.
You can always give it back.
I think the person who really needs the raise is our city clerk.
Oh. I'll trade places with him.
All you do. No, I didn't mean that, Alderman Holmes.
He has a staff and an office,
Yeah.
and, I mean, geez.
That's next. That's our next agenda item. I'm sorry if I offended you. What I meant was, everyone is deserving of fair compensation and to be compensated for the work they're doing. Most certainly.
Yeah, well, but that's not the case here. I mean, we are not being compensated fairly for the work we do. I signed up, when I first started, I think I got $1,200 a year. I think that's what I got. So anyway, and that's why when I see the expenditures for postcards being $400 and $500 a mailing, it just makes me nuts. I mean, I'd rather see that money given to aldermen so that they can determine if they want to spend it on mailings. And nobody challenges that, except me, I guess. Anyway, I'd call the question on
It's
this.
been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Next is ordinance 88012, setting compensation for our city clerk, also recommending a raise of 2% for the next 4 years, but beginning May 1st, 2013 through May 1st, 2016.
Move approval.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Ordinance 89012, setting compensation for our mayor. Again, a 2% raise for those same 4 years, May 1st, 2013 through May 1st, 2016. Is there a
Move
motion?
approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Ordinance 90012, setting compensation for the township assessor. Another recommended annual raise of 2% over 4 years, beginning May 1st, 2013 through May 1st, 2016.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Ordinance 91012, setting compensation for the township supervisor. A recommendation of an annual raise of 2% over 4 years, beginning May 1st, 2013 through May 1st, 2016.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Alderman Burris.
I just want to point out that the township supervisor actually makes $13,668 with the 2%, and that's actually more money than the city council, an alderman makes for the city council. And I'm glad that we're reviewing what's going on at the township and how much time is put in compared to an alderman's time. So I'm thankful that we're looking at that.
Alderman Rainey.
Could we find out, I was looking at the pension contributions in the township. I'd like to know who is eligible for pensions now. And I want to know if the supervisor and the assessor are making pension contributions.
I think the issue came up with the IMRF. I think the issue came up before at Human
Yes,
Services with regard to the IMRF
Yeah.
eligibility. Supervisor, yes.
I don't remember.
Assessor,
The
maybe
assessor
no.
wasn't, if I remember correctly.
I do not believe so, but we will confirm.
How is that different than an alderman? Are aldermen eligible for IMRF?
No.
Why is
I don't remember. I just remember that we had this discussion last year, I think it was, when it came up.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I believe we have memorandum from the last time this was raised. Rather than trust our memory, we'll just reproduce those memos.
All right, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Items A16 through A19 pertaining to the implementation of Emerson Square, part of our NSP2 grant program. A16 is ordinance 92012, authorizing the city manager to negotiate a sale contract for lots 1 and 2 of real property located at 1600 Foster Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alderman Rainey.
What is, I know it's part of the 18.15 million. What is the cost of this project in total? Nobody knows. I don't remember being here.
Dennis Marino?
Dennis Moreno, Manager of Planning and Zoning. Good evening. David Brent from Brinshaw and Todd Lieberman are here tonight, and so we will ask them to give a response to that question.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you all. Alderman Rainey, this phase of the project is about $13.8 million, of which $1.8 million, do I have that right? 1.5 million is coming from the NSP funds. The other funds are being leveraged from other sources.
I'm sorry, it's
It's a $2 million of NSP funds. It was 1.5 solar funds.
Okay.
Okay, say that one more time.
It's approximately $2 million of NSP funds, and about the whole project is $13 million. So another $11 million is being, we brought in another $11 million of additional sources.
And what is that, the developer, the EC, whatever, I can't remember, I'm looking for it, I lost it.
It's another entity created to be the development entity, of which Bryn Shore is the managing member.
But you created that?
We created, we control it.
All right. Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Been moved and seconded on item A16. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? A17 is ordinance 93-012, authorizing the sale of lots 1 and 2, real property locating at 1600 Foster Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ordinance 97-012, authorizing the city manager to negotiate a sale contract for lots 3, 4, and 5, and outlots A and B at 1600 Foster Street.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
A19 is ordinance 98-012, authorizing the sale contract for lots 3, 4, and 5, and outlots A and B of real property at 1600 Foster Street.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Are there any more items for discussion or communications? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chair, that was quick.
I have a problem. Begin it.
Planning and Development will begin at 7:15.